Welcome to Uncommon Knowledge. I'm Peter Robinson. Be sure to join us on Facebook at facebook.com/UNC Knowledge. Facebook.com/UNC Knowledge. Put up questions, suggestions for guests, comments. Dr. David Berlinski is the author of many books, including most recently 1, 2, 3, Absolutely Elementary Mathematics. 1, 2, 3 is about the peak of my own mathematical form, but the prose is so irresistible. I challenge, even if you're as much of a mathophobe as I am, you will not be able to put it down. An earlier book, and the book we'll spend most of our time discussing today, is The Devil's Delusion, Atheism and Its Scientific Pretensions. We should establish your professional background is, you're a polymath, but it's mathematics. You're a mathematician. If you have to be one thing, we'd call you a mathematician. Isn't that right?
Certainly, if you feel free to call me a mathematician, but I would so much prefer being called a writer, because that's what I do with most of my time.
Right.
As it happens, I write a lot about mathematics.
All right. Okay. I'm happy to do that. I can confirm that you're a writer. I couldn't possibly produce a testimony that you're a mathematician.
We're better off that way. Right. Better off.
Fine. Segment 1, Scientific Pretensions. From The Devil's Delusion, quote, "A great many men and women have a dull, hurt, angry sense of being oppressed by the sciences. They're frustrated by endless scientific boasting. They suspect that the scientific community holds them in contempt. They are right to feel this way." Close quote. Explain that.
It seems to me that anyone living in the United States, or even in Europe, I mean, this isn't purely an American phenomenon, has this feeling that they're a group of experts, a band of happy experts. And as experts will do, they derive enormous pleasure from telling the rest of us how to think, what doctrines to uphold, what positions to defend. And this conspiracy among experts, if it is delivered in small, manageable doses, for example, in a doctor's office, one is generally happy to receive it. Doctors know what you're talking about. Yeah, take an injection, that's fine. But as a cultural, as a social, as an ideological phenomenon, it gets on everyone's nerves after a while. I mean, what headline in any newspaper is more apt to provoke a sense of aggression and disbelief than "scientists say"? Now, you know what's coming afterwards. It's not the scientists saying anything. It's the political relations department of the scientific community, their publicity apparatus. They're telling the scientists what the scientists think they should say to the public. And within 24 hours, what serious scientists say has changed overnight. Look at the history of medicine over the last 50 years. One triumphant imbecility after another revealed to be a fraud. So there's a deep, and I think my words were well chosen, deep, hurt, perplexed sense of being oppressed by a scientific community that in many respects doesn't know what it's talking about. Not all, obviously not all, but in many respects. The boastfulness is what's so irritating.
And in this book, the particular form the boastfulness takes that you wish to refute is scientists saying,
yeah,
we've discovered that there is no God.
We know.
And we know there's no God because we are scientists. So what I'm trying to reduce this to a layman's term. What you're saying there is, don't be overawed by someone saying, A, I'm a scientist, and B, I'm an atheist. Don't suppose that statement B derives any particular authority from statement A. That's what you're saying, right?
The comparable claim would be, A, I'm a scientist, B, I'm an expert on contract law.
Right.
Well, yeah, expert on contract law because you study particle physics, give me a break.
Right.
Expert on the existence of God because you studied particle physics. I request the same break, the same suspension of belief, the same absence of commitment to whatever it is you're saying. And these guys are, of course, shameless. They're just shameless.
Segment 2, Darwin.
Good old boy.
Good old boy. The Devil's Delusion. Quote. This is quite a quotation. It's only a few words, but it's...
Packs a punch.
Yes, it does. 2 of them, I think. Suspicions about Darwin's theory arise for 2 reasons. The first, the theory makes little sense. The second, it is supported by little evidence. Close quote. All right, let's take those one at a time. Evolution makes little sense. Evolution is in the air. It's so widely accepted.
It's in the air of the New York Times, that's for sure. And it's in the mouth of every evolutionary biologist, but that doesn't exhaust the cosmos. Let me ask you a question. If those two propositions you were to exceed were completely true, would it change your mind?
That
Those are the two quotations.
that evolution makes little, the theory makes little sense in and of itself, and it's supported by little evidence. David, it wouldn't change my mind because I'm so completely on your side on this one.
Well, I mean, if you were on the other side.
If I were on the other side, yes, but I would do everything I could to. I mean, that's sort of like the vampire
But
approach.
I assure you, it would change no one's mind. And
Oh,
that's the
really?
curious thing about the discussion. Do you think it would change Richard Dawkins' mind? Or
But,
Sam
but
Harris?
why do you say that the theory in itself makes so little sense?
Well, what's it say? Whatever survives, survives. No, I knew that before.
Because it's
I didn't even have to
tautological.
study Darwin.
It's tautological.
It's empty.
It's empty.
It's empty. It doesn't tell us anything. Yeah, survive, survive. I'll believe that. But that's not a theory. That's just a string of wet sponges on a clothesline. That doesn't tell us anything deep about biological structure. Yeah, a lot of variations. Children don't look exactly like their parents, thank goodness. And their children will be slightly different too. But does that tell us why startling, complex structures arise in the history of life? No, it doesn't have anything to do with it.
It is supported by little evidence. Now that, I have to say, did startle me to hear you say that evolution is supported by little evidence.
What is the evidence that's forever being introduced? Well, there's
I
the
can
fossil
tell you, little boy, father took me to the Museum of Natural History in New York. There it is over on the west side of Manhattan.
Yeah.
And all the plaques said then what they say now, which is this dinosaur came at such and is at such and such a period. And there are charts on the wall saying somehow or other how we got from those dinosaurs to creatures that are alive today. That's the
Not
evidence.
bad. And there are arrows connecting the creatures.
Indeed, there are.
Where were the arrows discovered? That the museum won't tell you. There is such a load of inferential adjustment made in even the most plausible evolutionary sequence. I mean, take reptile to mammal. That's a beautiful evolutionary sequence. It looks like one organism is being slotted right after the other, and tremendously interesting changes where bones in the jaw migrate to become the 3 bones in the ear, the structure of the mouth changes completely. And that's the best. Or the whale sequence, some sort of terrestrial animal becomes a whale over roughly 9 million years. But that doesn't amount to an elaboration of anything more than the discovery of fossils that could be slotted in an evolutionary way. Could be. But what we lack is the analytic refinement to tell us whether they are or have been slotted in this way. It is simply an exercise in conditional plausibility. Yeah, it could have happened that way. No one on my side of the table is saying, no, it's impossible that it happened that way. What we're saying is that the evidence is remarkably, remarkably constrained, meager, insufficient, inadequate, and lacking all forms of analytic sufficiency.
Actually, I want to ask, this is going to be the final question. So we know that this program is watched disproportionately by kids, college kids. So you have somebody in college who's going to, I don't know if you went through this when you were an undergraduate, you being you probably went through it at the age of 7. But it's the sort of thing that I went through when I was an undergraduate, which is you show up at college and you look around and you realize that a lot of very bright people are atheists. And since most people, just numerically speaking, come from these millions and millions who do believe, to assume the existence of a God, there can be a really quite disorienting moment. And given the various proclivities, the time, the course interests of the student may wish to investigate this in as rigorous a way as an 18 or 19-year-old can. What advice would you give to such a student?
To investigate the question.
Yeah.
I would suggest to any student entering college now, 2011, do what I'm sure he hasn't done. Go read the Old Testament. That should be your first challenge. I always ask my students in philosophy, have you read the Bible? Oh, yeah, I've read the Bible, sure. But when I interrogate the students, it turns out reading the Bible means they have a Bible on their bookshelf. I said, have you opened it? Yeah, we've opened it, but opening it doesn't mean reading it. The Old Testament is the greatest repository of human knowledge and wisdom in the history of civilization, any culture, any time, any place. And that really should be the first point of discussion, because every attitude current today in the discussion, from Richard Dawkins to me, to Christopher Hitchens, to lonely pastors in the Bible Belt, on Sunday morning, ranting from a particular text, is discussed in the Bible. And there's a character in the Bible who expresses that point of view, and there's sympathy expressed for that point of view, and there are reservations expressed by the sympathy. And it's an enormously complex, rich, dramatic piece of work. That's the first.
All right. David Berlinski, author of The Devil's Delusion, Atheism and Its Scientific Pretensions. Thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I'm Peter Robinson for Uncommon Knowledge. Thanks for joining us.